I think this is a very interesting thing that you don't think about until you've had some of these like very, very intense highs. There's really nowhere to go but down. I think about it this way, like imagine a roller coaster where the high is so high, the peak is so, so, so high. The next day or the weeks after like the high, there's nowhere to go but down. And typically you're going down rapidly.
Welcome back to No Map Included. I'm Yessi Sanchez, and today's conversation is with filmmaker Erin Brown Thomas. We really get into the nitty-gritty of filmmaking, independent filmmaking that is. We talk about the highs and lows and what comes after success, after Sundance. So stick around for this conversation because it was absolutely and truly phenomenal. Welcome, Erin. I'm so glad to have you here.
So good to be here. So good to see you.
So I want to start with a warm-up question. What's something you've watched this year that you haven't stopped thinking about? It could be a film, TV show, a documentary, anything that stayed with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a film and a TV show. The TV show is recent, so I'm thinking about it a lot now. We'll see if I'm still thinking about it in a year, but I just finished Widow's Bay, and I'm really loving it. And I particularly loved the first Patricia episode. I won't give away what that is, other than there's a moment where everyone's mouth is open that I thought was just like incredibly, you'll know it when you see it, but that moment for me was like very, very effective. And I love blending comedy and suspense. So that show is just doing it. But in movies, I've seen a lot of movies this year. I really enjoyed Eurupsia, which is a film that Pete O's made. And I think the reason I can't stop thinking about it is just because like the story of how it was made. Pete O's makes these movies. He kind of gets some actors together, they go somewhere, they basically kind of come up with the story together and then they shoot it. And my friend Will Madden is a longtime collaborator with Pete. He was in another movie they did together called Jessica that I really liked. But this last one, Eurupsia, Pete got Charlie XCX to be in it. If you're curious about that, you can read any of the articles online that kind of talk about how they met up and she decided to fit filming an extremely independent movie in between all the crazy things she was doing. But that movie, I thought it turned out great. And I'm really into this idea of like getting a bunch of people together and just making something with like low money, low stakes. Pete had said like, hey, if this doesn't turn out good, if we get in post and it's just not working, we just won't release it. So there was, less money, I'm sure still when you have someone like Charlie XCX in your movie, you're feeling the internal pressure to make it great so that you have something.
Right.
But there's something very cool about that approach to filmmaking. It's very different than my approach, but I've been itching to just do something like that as like a total creative exercise / like love for the craft versus like I've put 3 years of my life into this thing.
For anyone who's not really in the indie world but would want to watch more indie movies, where would they find that? Where do you look for things like that?
Well, I think this is where the curator becomes important. Like figure out whose curation really means something to you. I think, we get so used to the curators being the channels or the distributors or the theaters, right? So I really like a lot of Apple TV shows. And in that way, Apple's a curator. But there are curators beyond that. So, I'll follow film festivals and kind of have a sense of different festivals and what their taste profile is. And so if you've seen like, oh, this is coming out of this festival, you could kind of track which films have come out that year. Letterboxd is such a great tool for this because like certain festivals will put their lineup on Letterboxd so that you can just be like, okay, here's a list. Like when Chasers got into Sundance, we appeared on Sundance's list, but we also appeared on like suddenly my movie was just on all these Letterboxd lists like by the end of the day when the news went live because people were creating like watch lists based on certain festivals. So that'll happen with TIFF or Claremont-Ferrand if you're just talking shorts or South by Southwest. So I would say like look at festivals as curators, but again, you can also look at Letterboxd users as curators, right? So if you are starting to figure out who in your life is watching stuff that's really cool, you can start paying attention to them on Letterboxd.
I think that's really cool. That's something that people don't really know. And I think in the future, because there are so many movies and so many like very expensive movies, but I feel like people are getting sick of like the repeated storyline. And so I feel like in the near future, people will want to consume original ideas. So I think it'll become more important, like where can you find it? What platform can make it accessible? So thank you for the tips there. And you mentioned Chasers. You mentioned it before, it premiered at Sundance last year. I can't believe it's already been a year. Time moves by so quickly. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more what Chasers is about?
Sure. So Chasers is a 32-minute project. I conceived it as a short film and am now pitching it as a series. So after I finished it, I realized, oh, this actually feels like a pilot, and have developed a series since. But the film follows a woman named Sophia. She's a young, like 22-year-old musician who's recently moved out to LA. And it follows her through a house party in a single shot staged as a continuous oneer over 32 minutes. And at this house party, her primary objective is to basically kind of define the relationship with a guy that she's been, kind of seeing kind of off and on. Try to take it to a level where she feels like there's something predictable, where there's a label on it. And for her, that means getting him to agree to go to her sister's wedding. So this film, or pilot, if you will, it snakes its way through an LA house party, sort of juxtaposed the red flags in her dating relationship with the everyday hustle of pursuing a creative dream. Sophia is surrounded by all these different people who are in Los Angeles pursuing some sort of creative outlet, whether it's film, music, being in the agency side, etc. And we're just watching everybody sort of chase the dangling carrot, this idea that like we'll always walk towards the next breadcrumb, and then another breadcrumb needs to be sat down. And so for me, the genesis of the project was really me asking myself, like, why am I still in this film industry? And looking at each like success and benchmark as something that kind of kept me in it. You hear all these success stories with people who are like, oh, I was going to quit. I was on the verge of quitting, but then my big break came. And they're so happy about it. I definitely am a believer in manifestation, and I like focus my life like around that story. But there are all of these stories where people just hung on and hung on and hung on and then regretted that they didn't give up 20 years ago and have a totally different life. And so Chasers was a way of me wrestling with that feeling of like, am I paying my dues or am I chasing my own abuse? So I wanted to watch that happen in a relationship alongside that happening in the world in which I live and work and play every day.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen the film and it is so beautiful, especially as a one shot. It's incredible what you have created with Chasers, but especially like the deeper meaning about it. I mean, that's something that filmmakers, creatives in general, and also what I talk a lot about in this podcast, it's something that we're struggling with so much. Like chasing that dream, but also chasing the abuse. And it is such a beautiful industry, but it is also so hard. And you mentioned milestones and like achieving certain things and chasing that. So I want to know more about what it was before and after Sundance, and like your expectations, like what would happen to your career afterwards and what actually did happen with your career.
Sure. I will say I think like what I thought could happen is pretty similar to what has happened. I think if I had had this kind of success like years ago, like shortly after moving to LA, my expectations for what might have happened on the other side might have been inflated. And I don't know, maybe that kind of delusion would have paid off, to be honest. Sometimes I find that people's delusion works to their advantage. But really the biggest change, I think, is that it's changed the way people look at me. I've always, and I think this is a very relatable thing, I've always felt that I had a potential that others weren't seeing. And of course, I still feel that way to a degree. And I think part of that is that, I was simultaneously curating while making movies, and I would make movies and they'd perform well. Like Subtext was really well loved. Yessie, you had a part in Subtext. A Question of Service as well, really well loved, but they hadn't hit like a big festival. And by big, what I mean is like one that people who are not in film have heard of. Those had played plenty of film festivals that mean something to people in our industry. But when you play something like Sundance, if my dad tells his friends in Ohio, his, 70-year-old running buddies, like, hey, my daughter played Sundance. They know what that means, whereas they might not know something like Cordillera or Sedona or Austin, right? So
Right.
I think there was just this sense of it's immediate validation, and most of the people in my life who have seen the film, I think they recognize what I'm capable of. Because I think also like the project, while I don't know that it was any more well executed than my projects previous, it was just very challenging. It was a challenging project. And so to execute something so challenging gave people this confidence that, like, oh, she's ready for more. We can trust her with more. So that was part of it. I would say, there's also just an element of access. I wouldn't say the access has been like crazy improved, but it's been improved. In general, like if I or my management wants to, cold reach out to someone, we'll get a response now. Is it always the response we want? No, but we're getting a response. And I can speak to this on being on the other side. Like, I think people do a lot of cold outreach in this business and feel like they're just like, shooting into the wind. It's just like, is anyone even reading these things? Because there's so much not answering. And that's really, really hard to put work out there and not hear anything back. I do understand it because I can tell you I get so much cold outreach constantly myself. As someone who's not famous, has had a small margin of success, and has some influence through Salute Your Shorts, I can't even imagine someone who has the ability to fully greenlight a multi-million-dollar project, or somebody who their attachment to it can do the same thing, how inundated they must feel and how they must be selective about who they actually respond to, even if that response is a no. But I've gotten more yeses and I've gotten more nos, and even getting those nos is an improvement upon hearing nothing. So that's been a really big improvement or change in the career. I remember I posted about sort of like what you think life's going to be like after Sundance versus what it is shortly after. And Claudette Godfrey, who is the former features programmer, I believe her title was larger than that, but essentially I knew her as the features programmer at South by Southwest. She reached out to me on Instagram and she was just like, this is what I always tell filmmakers at orientation is like, don't think of this as reaching the end. Think of this as like a new beginning. It's like upgrading to a larger pond, if you will. You're a little fish and you grew into a koi-sized fish in a koi-sized pond, and it leaped you into this other pond. And so I think that's where like imposter syndrome comes in. And this is the thing that like predictably I could have saw that I was going to go through, but like wasn't necessarily ready for emotionally, was just the amount of imposter syndrome you start feeling when you have success. Partially it's that pressure to have the next thing be just as big, just as awesome. And part of it is just that I can tell you, had Chasers premiered at a smaller festival, the reviews would have been glowing. But because it premieres at Sundance, people have expectations of it being perfect. And it got plenty of great reviews, but it had people being really hard on it as well. I will say the beauty is I love that project so much that when I read those reviews, I disagree with them. I think it's totally possible. Like I could see on a different film that isn't so me, that I just can't own as emotionally as I can with Chasers, letting reviews feel not only like hurtful, but like, oh shoot, they're probably right. I never felt like, oh, they're right. I just felt like you don't see me. That's what I felt when I read, again, no terrible reviews, just reviews that weren't glowing, reviews that were like, I had a review that was frustrated that we focused on Sophia's storyline instead of one of the other characters. And this reviewer, my gut feeling was that they were frustrated with the lack of diversity in the overall lineup in the Sundance episodic block because they called me out for having a white protagonist. But, I was working alongside a white actress who I co-wrote the piece with. So that wasn't something that we could change about ourselves and about the story
Right.
we wanted to tell. So that was a frustrating review more than a bad review. And again, I think I see sort of the agenda of like, and this is what I mean, like you get into Sundance and suddenly everyone's ideas of not only how good a Sundance film should be, but what it should be, right? What Sundance should be prioritizing. Those things are valid. Like that is a valid statement to say like that I don't see myself in this pilot block and I wish I did. Valid statement. But to everyone who'd worked really, really hard on the project, including the many diverse actors that were playing some of the supporting roles and, would be having major career glow up if we got to pick up this series. It was really hard to hear. So I think that was the hardest thing. Like, it was just like, okay, so now I'm have this ability to be a public punching bag. And that's something that's kind of been in tandem with Salute Your Shorts at the same time, is as the festivals got bigger and people want to get into it more and more, people go to Reddit or go places or just hate on me, hate on the festival. It's any part of success. Like, this is just something that, Elle Shaw, who is like my longtime producing partner at this point and produces the festival with me, she and I talk about it all the time. Is just like, you're doing something right when people hate you.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I have to applaud you also for like, maybe believing is not the right word, but like really confidently know what your project is and having the mindset of, okay, they didn't see me. Like, it's frustrating because they didn't see me, instead of like beating yourself up about the film. It's like something really beautiful to have. And I think also a skill to have that mindset that, no, I know what I'm doing here. Like, it's just a different interpretation, I guess. Or yeah, I think that's very beautiful. And I got to applaud you for that. But in your everyday life, how do you deal with like all the negativity that is around that? Like you said, when people hate you, you're doing something right. But like, how does it not get to you, basically?
I mean, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, right? When it does, I have my family who, I always say to filmmakers, like, when you're facing rejection, like, it's good to have one person, maybe two in your life who you can just vent, complain to, who the only thing they're going to say is so-and-so is wrong and you're right. And basically just someone that is there for your ego. Like, until you say, okay, I'm ready to come out of my ego, how do I improve? So, I mean, I have those people in my life who are just like good for my ego in a way that I can have my squishy ego, angry monster moment, and then like more publicly be like, okay, but for real, here I am.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But here's a lesson. Like, I'm working on this feature now and I'm in post, and post-production is a roller coaster for me because I've been saying, like, I go back and forth between feeling like a total genius and a total like idiot. And it's, because you discover your mistakes, whether they were things that you knew were mistakes as you were doing them, but you just didn't have the resources otherwise or the time, or things that you were like, I thought that was great. And now I realized I should have done something different. So you're realizing all those, but you're also like problem solving and like sometimes discovering things that are really cool. So it's like a very like high highs, low lows moment. But one of the things that I'm discovering about the mistakes that are easier to swallow in post is when you stuck to your guns and you were wrong, it doesn't hurt as much as when someone suggested to do something else and you ignored your gut and you went with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough because your crew and your department heads are there to save you from your blind spots. And I think one of the hardest things about directing is being able to like navigate in the moment. Are they improving this story or just making it different? If they are just making it different, stick to what you originally thought. If they are improving, go with them. And it is sometimes obvious, but it is sometimes very, very difficult. And decision fatigue really, really like hits hard, especially on longer projects like pilots or features. You get like 10 days into a 20-day shoot. You're like in the exact middle of it. You're tired. Maybe you're on like day 6 in a row of like barely sleeping and long days. And someone suggests something and everyone's kind of rallying around like, oh, cool idea. I love that. That's cool. And your gut is like, I kind of liked this other thing better, but I guess that's cool. And I want to be collaborative. That I'm finding that those moments are the moments where I'm frustrated in post, where I'm just like, shoot, I would have liked my idea better. And that's not to say that my collaborators didn't have good ideas, but I'm also encountering places where I didn't listen to their advice and I wish I had, but I'm not feeling as frustrated with those mistakes, quote unquote, as I am the ones where I didn't listen to myself. So I think what the lesson is with Chasers was just like, because that project was the most me of anything I've ever made. I did co-write it with Sierra Crony, who, you know, also played Sophia, was amazing in it, and was an amazing collaborative partner and really brought so much to the dialogue. I mean, really, the beauty of writing it with her was that we could hear the main character speak as we were writing it, sitting shoulder to shoulder as we were, getting it down. But the concept was something that was like a download inside my soul, like before I brought it to her. And I had complete control as like the creator of it and as a producer on it. Now I'm in a situation where I'm working for hire, and it's a really good experience because I'm learning what it would be like to direct more TV or direct maybe a studio feature. I keep joking, like I'm like doing a Marvel movie without the budget. But I say that because, I got to write the script. There was already like a story in place before I came, but they let me do a page one rewrite. So I got to kind of write the script in a way that it made sense to me, but I was already dealing with essentially IP and story points that I had to hit, character pieces that I had to hit. And I will say it's definitely harder to connect with your gut when something just doesn't fully originate from you. And so that's what I'm navigating now on this side. It's not to say this isn't worth doing or that I never want to direct TV. I absolutely want to direct TV. It's just, it's a different type of connection to the material. And that's what I'm learning to navigate right now.
Yeah. And also, I can imagine that that is harder than to listen to your gut if you have those points that you have to hit. There is something stuck in my head from the very beginning that you mentioned, and this is like not a great segue, but when you get to Sundance, it is a beginning of a new chapter, because I feel like life in general is like you are in the messy middle of something, then you have an ending of something, but it is actually just the beginning of the next level, so to say. It's like a game. You're constantly leveling up to the next thing. What do you think is the next, or where do you see the next and I guess that's a hard question to answer.
No, I think I know what you're getting at. I mean, there's like the internal barometer, but then there's the measurable outward thing. I'll start with the measurable outward thing. I think I got a 32-minute project into a prestige film festival. When will I get a feature there? Will it be this feature? Will it be my next one? Hopefully it'll be this one. That's a measure of growth, of fish growth in the pond. Having meaningful distribution, something where a lot of people see it. That's meaningful growth. Having a good critical rating, whether it's, the popcorn meter or the tomato meter, either of those things feels like measurable growth. For me, on the process side of things, I think whenever people ask me like, oh, how do you know you're successful? I think like for me, it's really about the tools. This is the one I always come back to. It's like being able to know that in my next project, I could have the soundtrack I want. Like just that those resources are available to me to be like, I loved this Phoebe Bridgers song and I'm going to put it in my movie. The movie that I'm on right now, we have like budget for one needle drop, and it can't be it can be maybe something that some people have heard of, but not everybody. But for me, like I watch some of these movies that have incredible soundtracks and I'm like, gosh, really elevates the film. So for me, it's like having the tools available. So music's one tool. And I have an incredible music supervisor that I'm working with who was a music supervisor on The Singers. And he's awesome in making that dream like more and more available to me. I also have incredible composers that, when you don't need needle drops, you've already got it made with your amazing composers. Shout out Dan and Adam. But on the other side, like I was rewatching the Euphoria pilot last night for voiceover inspiration, and I was just enamored again. Like that pilot is so perfect to me. And there's so many things they're doing visually. I mean, the rotating room for one. I'm like a big, big dreamer when it comes to pushing the boundaries visually. Of course, like why else do you do a 32-minute one? I mean, you do a 32-minute oneer because it's the right way to tell the story, but like, why do you attempt to do it? Because you're crazy, right? And I am crazy. So like, I mean, I've got notebooks and notebooks full of ideas of like really boundary pushing things that I want to do with cinematography. And for me, success is getting to play in the playgrounds that I want to play in and like tackling really, really complex rigs with really, really cool grips and cinematographers and like really, really cool like lighting designs with gaffer. Like I like geek out about getting into it with camera and grip and lighting and in production design and just creating really amazing things. And so for me, like the ideas of like, okay, you got into TIFF or your movie, look at Obsession, like made 400 million, like the, yes, those things feel really good in the moment, but they fade. Like I guarantee you the come down from them. We could talk about that in a second. Cause like, that's the other thing I didn't really see coming. Like the come down from success is like real. The emotional thing is like a high, right? But the thing that can last is like, you now are getting to like tackle bigger and bigger not problems, but like obstacles, challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have an opportunity to try exciting things. Like that's the real success.
Been thinking a lot about like success. What is success for me? And like I define it for myself and like my acting career that I stepped away from. By the way, I don't know if you know that.
I didn't. Wait, if I call you, will you not answer?
No, I will.
You're just not auditioning.
I'm not auditioning. I don't like the industry side. I mean, I've been performing since I was like 3 years old. It's like, I can't do the business side of it, but I am writing a short film where I am going to be in it,
Yeah.
Like I love acting, but I just don't like the industry part of it anymore. I need to remove myself because for me it gets like really toxic really fast. I had to think about like what is success to me because like for a moment the last, I don't know, 10 years where I was professionally acting just feel like they've been just a waste, or that has felt like it when I first stepped away from it, and then redefining what success looks like for me. But essentially the same thing, like all the cool things that I was able to experience, all the cool projects that I was part of, all the characters that I was like able to play, like from like a victim of domestic abuse to a stripper, like, like so many different characters. And I feel like being grateful for those moments, that is like what success is for me. And I feel like essentially it is the same thing. You see like the challenge that you can dive into and you really talk with like so much passion. And I think that is exactly what success is, I think. Yeah. So thank you for defining it that way.
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to talk about the come down at all? Like I was saying a second ago?
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think people don't really, you're asking like, what is the thing you didn't expect after success? And this has been something, because I've had a couple different like success moments the past year and a half. Getting into Sundance was like a huge one for me. I was also an associate producer on The Singers, which had that historic tie for the live action short. I think this is a very interesting thing that you don't think about until you've had some of these like very, very intense highs. There's really nowhere to go but down. And I think about it this way, like imagine a roller coaster where the high is so high, the peak is so, so, so high. The next day or the weeks after like the high, there's nowhere to go but down. And typically you're going down rapidly. That doesn't mean you're bottoming out, right? Like, so I kind of think of it this way, like you come down and you're not necessarily going to like the lowest low points you've ever been at where something bad happens or like there's a loss or there's, a long dry spell or anything. But a lot of times, like, it's the deceleration that is just scary because you're coming off of such a high that even though you don't go as low, how fast you're coming down from it, it just gives you this like weird, I don't know how to describe it. I just call it the come down from the high. And I've had a couple come downs from highs over the past few years. And it's weird. Like the impulse is just sort of numb because you're just like, uh-oh. And I've had to like just name it out loud to normalize it, to be like, it was not sustainable to be at such a high for so long. And it is okay that I'm not feeling that high. But I think it's like related to like the dopamine chase that we're on all the time with like this thing. I'm holding up my phone for those of you who are only listening and not able to see. We do kind of get like addicted to like the dopamine chase. And these highs are like the ultimate form of dopamine. Like they're just like the ultimate form. And so you have to like, this is, I think, one of those reasons why I think people who have like gone through a big success, like want to find each other. Part of it is like we feel like peers and we want to like benefit from each other's like successes or work or whatever. But I think there's also just this like feeling of like you get it, right? Like no one wants to be the kind of person that's like complaining about having success. That I've like called several friends this year. I had a couple friends get into Sundance. This is the year after I did, and I reached out to them immediately, congratulated them, and I was just like, listen, like, just for those of you who don't know, it's like a ton of work getting ready for this festival. Like the number of deliverables is insane. Insane. When I got the news 2 years ago, I was in the middle of writing a feature, a studio feature for hire. And I had to call the studio and just say, can you give me a 2-week extension? Because I have to put full-time work for like at least 2 weeks into just the deliverables that Sundance needs. So first of all, there's just like tons of deliverables. Again, not complaining about it. It's a lot. But then there's also just these like intense highs. So I called them all and I was like, if you need a vent at any point because you're stressed out because of all the deliverables, all the prep you're doing for like press, to be prepared to feel like you're making the most of the moment, or because you're feeling like really, really weird on the other side, like I'm here, I understand. And it's nice to just be able to relate to people who have gone through the similar thing. Cause at the end of the day, it's like, it's easy to just be like, oh, first world problems. But like, emotions should be validated, whether they're having to do with, hi, my life is in danger and I'm somewhere very scary. Even like, yes, obviously very important, but it's still important to acknowledge the emotions of,
Of
wow, I'm
course.
coming up from a high. Like, I think we become better humans if we know how to handle our emotions, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that is I know exactly what you're talking about because I feel like with acting or going to like I've been to film festivals and it had like this constant go 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 go, and you kind of get into a habit of like a lot of things happening, and you have a lot of meetings with people who could open doors, and then you get home and you expect the phone to ring or something to happen because you were on the go for several weeks or months or whatever, and then all of a sudden nothing is happening. Same with like preparation for a feature film or like any kind of preparation. Like you go up and up and up and up and up, and then the thing happens, and then the next day it's just like I
I'm still
feel
stuck
so
with
empty.
myself.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm still me with
Yeah.
all those things that were
Yeah.
me are different.
But I also feel like the emptiness, like it feels so empty, or like you said before, it feels so numb when you are coming down. And that is a thing to acknowledge. And I think it's something to be taken seriously because it has to do with your mental health. And I think it is really important to have a sustainable career to acknowledge those things and not think about like all the problems that everyone else is having. So yeah, thank you so much for defining that and getting into like the nitty gritty of everything, because that's what No Map Included is all about. Because there is no map when it comes to creative careers, when it comes to directing, writing, whatever your endeavor is. It is a lot to handle, and like seeing how you're dealing with success and dealing with everything that is happening and how busy you are, and like you're being so level-headed. Like it is a really great example, and it's very inspirational. So thank you so much for all your insights.
Oh, absolutely. I got to tell you, I love the name of your podcast, No Map
Thank
Included.
you.
Like, when we do panels for Salute Your Shorts every year, Elle and I always say, like, we love craft-based panels rather than how to navigate the industry. I think, like, because I agree with you that there's really no map included, I think, when people just talk about how they broke in, it's so anecdotal. It's not repeatable. It's not predictable. It's potentially repeatable, but that's random and accidental, right? I
Exactly.
think like the thing that makes more sense is just to be like living in the, like be paying attention to the moment and responding to the moment that you're in when it comes to career advice. And like, but in terms of like where I like to spend my time, if I'm getting advice from someone who's ahead of me, I want that advice generally to be about what they did today or yesterday, or I want it to be about craft, because I feel like if we just keep working our craft, if we just keep working to like make ourselves better storytellers, like the map will reveal itself in hindsight, in the rearview
Yeah.
mirror. It will come into fruition, but it's all going to come into place because we're doing the things. And like, I think you doing this podcast and is such a great example of that, because you're like, okay, listen to myself. What's giving me joy? What are the opportunities of the moment? And so you're finding a way to you're still, I mean, yes, you're still in the industry, but you're taking it into your own hands. You're giving yourself agency, which is just so great. Like, I'm such a believer of agency. So anyways, I like it. There is no map included.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to No Map Included. I'm Yessi Sanchez, and if something came up for you during this episode, I would love to hear from you. You can comment wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can send me a message on Instagram. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next Tuesday.